Welcome to the Coast to Coast podcast, brought to you by Play Picks and the Lines. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined by my guy Nate Weitzer on the East Coast. And we're running along on this pretty big Wednesday night slate, taking a look at the Chicago Bulls taking on the Atlanta Hawks in Chicago. Second straight game between these two teams. Make sure that you are checking out playpicks.com and thelines.com as these COVID protocols are affecting lineups all the way up to pretty much game time. So you want to see who's in and out of those lineups all the way up until those tip-offs to make sure you're getting those bets in correctly. Nate does have a great article up on playpicks.com as well with some of those best bets and player props for you. And as always, if you do still need a FanDuel or DraftKings account, head to fdpicks.com or dkpicks.com and find those listings in your area, such as what we've got for tonight. Nate, let's get into it.
Yeah, these teams, the Hawks and Bulls, just played in Atlanta on Monday. Both missing some key defenders, and that game was a shootout. Now we have a spread of plus 8.5 for Atlanta in Chicago, and the total that's sitting around 223. We'll see where that closes. Quickly looking at the other games on a full slate, we got Hornets plus 3 at Pacers, total of 228 there. Pistons are plus 7.5 at home against the Knicks. The Celtics minus 6 hosting the Clippers. The Grizzlies are minus 6 hosting the Lakers, total of 226. We break down the betting angles in that one in a separate episode. Miami Heat up to plus 5 at the Spurs. They're missing Kyle Lowry and others due to protocol. The Thunder are plus 14 at the Suns. The Jazz without Donnie Mitchell, minus 7 at Blazers, and Mavericks minus 2 at Kings. Outside chance they get Luka back tonight. If you want to bet that one right now, I won't stop you. But what we're looking at here is the Hawks with Trae Young back, not looking like a complete stuck in the mud offense anymore. I mean, they did just lose 3 more guys to protocol, now raising the total above 10 total. And the key one there for offense is Bogdanovic, who's going to be out. But they lose even more defense in the process. They lost Gorgie Dang and Onyewu. John Collins already on that list. TLC out. Clint Capella still working his way back into his defensive form. So I don't really see them stopping the Chicago team that, even though they don't play with much pace, they have been deadly efficient recently. In fact, they lead the league in field goal percentage, 3-point percentage by far. Of course, that gives them the best offensive rating. And they're scoring the second most points, 122.8, behind the Spurs in their last 4 games because the Spurs are just playing at a blinding pace. But we're talking about a Chicago team that dropped 133, again, in a game with a 94 pace against Houston. When these teams met, they dropped 130 at a 96 pace, which is up from what Atlanta was playing at before they got Trae back. So now they got Trae back. He goes 29 points. He goes 12 for 12 from the free throw line, which is really key when you're talking about betting a total here. His ability to get to the line, which he was struggling at a lot early, because of those points of emphasis for the officials. But in his last 6, you take 5 games before he hit the COVID list, averaging 32 points per game and nearly 10 free throws per game and hitting 91% of those. And his last trip to Chicago, 37 points, 10 for 12 from the field, 12 for 14 at the line. We know Trae loves to be the villain on the road. He will hopefully keep this Hawks offense on schedule with help from Cam Reddish, who is breaking out in front of our eyes. His last 4, averaging 24 points per game, shooting 44% from 3 at a 28% usage rate. And, playing nearly 40 minutes per game and not having the energy to play much defense. Nice individual defensive rating of 118. And they gave up a 134 offensive rating to Chicago in this last matchup. Just one last note here. Obviously, I'm hammering the over in my thoughts. But the Hawks, they've won their last 5 road games, and 4 out of those 5 have gone over. The only exception being Orlando, which scored 99 points. Any other decent offense has been able to score with the Hawks. And we're talking about the best offense in the league in the last couple of weeks in the Bulls, who are without their 2 best defensive players, Lonzo Ball, Alex Caruso. You throw in Kobe White instead of Alex Caruso, and all of a sudden things get a lot easier for the opposing backcourt.
Totally.
So that is why I think we definitely see an over here again. I think the Hawks maybe do a better job of keeping it close here, even though it's on the road. We've seen in that home and home that second time around, the team that lost comes back with a little more effort. But really, it's about the over here. If you want to tease it so you get Hawks plus 12 in the over, that's great. But Hawks have been going over on the road. Bulls have gone over in 6 of their last 7 home games. It just really speaks to a lot of points here.
Yeah, no, 100%. Really liking the points in this one, and partly because Chicago, as you mentioned, without Lonzo, without Caruso, defensive rating definitely goes way up. And such has been the case in the last bit. In the last 5 or so, they've had, as you mentioned, there's been a lot more Kobe White, a lot less Caruso and Lonzo, a lot more Tyler Cook, even getting about 10 to 15 minutes a game. And just guys that aren't known necessarily as those defensive stoppers that Chicago has been banking on that defense. It's no surprise that in the last 5, their defensive rating plummets. They're both them and the Hawks in their last 5, which is a pretty good sample size for both these teams for what we're going to see tonight, in my opinion. Obviously, Trae Young inserted into this lineup over Bogdanovich. It's still a plus when you look at that trade. But without Bogey, without one of those two guys, they're both way less effective, and their offense is obviously way less effective. So that Bogey is sitting out tonight is really what bothers me. But the Bulls have been bad on defense without those guys, as we mentioned. Both these teams are actually in the bottom 3 in opponent field goal percentage, opponent 3-point percentage over the last 5 games or so, as they've both been missing guys. But what we know is the Bulls can score as long as DeMar and Zach LaVine are on the floor together, and the Hawks can at least have some semblance of an NBA offense when Trae Young isn't. I mean, Trae Young steps onto the floor and he is an NBA offense. It's that simple. You put one rim runner around him that can set screens like Capella, a few wings that can shoot, and an athlete like John Collins, and you're going to have an incredible offense. You take a bunch of that away, you've still got that pick and roll with Trae, able to hit guys like you said. Cam Reddish being in is helpful. Really wish DeLon Wright was playing as well. I think it would be a fun little 2-guard offense, but he's out as well. So it's the team total for the Bulls is where I start, just because I do think that's what I rely on more than anything, is they're going to show up on offense. I don't exactly know what I'm going to get from the Hawks on offense with all those players missing. That's why that's the only thing I feel truly, truly comfortable about tonight, is the Bulls getting theirs, and both LaVine and DeMar getting theirs as well, as we wait to see what those player props are. But I think, the home splits as well for Chicago and how well they play at home just adds to the fact that, once again, I feel more confident than anything that they're going to get their points. And that's my best bet for tonight for sure, is just their team total starting there and making myself at least feel good about a bet that it gets me about minus 110 on my money at FanDuel. Yeah,
I mean, I'll take overs on both sides, including the Hawks, just because it's so exploitable. It was 106.5. It's now up to 107.5 at DraftKings, which is exactly what the Bulls are allowing in their last 4 home games. Some of that against teams that definitely don't have the same kind of weaponry as a team led by Trae Young, as you mentioned. And some guys from the G League that are making a name for themselves, along with Cam Reddish, Skylar Mays, Malcolm Hill, they'll be ready to jump in and be effective. And we will see Capella ramp up here. He gets to match up with Vucevic, who is, not a good defender at all. And in their last 5 at home, the Bulls, their offensive rating is through the roof, 122, but their defensive rating 20th in the league at 112. So I do think we can expect the Hawks to continue to ramp up now that they at least have their leader back. They don't have everybody back on the wing, but they can come with it and score 108 points, I think, in this spot and help us get over the total altogether.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Considering how low that team total is for Atlanta, I'm not saying I necessarily like it more than the Bulls, just because there is a little bit of fear of a bit of regression without Bogey. I think he's that important. But that 107 total, as you mentioned, for the Hawks does feel pretty low, which just leads me to go back to that over as well, which I don't necessarily feel as comfortable about the total there, just because I'm feeling a little bit of fear, but scared money don't make money, and so I would say hitting either of these team totals is probably a good play as well. Considering a tease in this one is something I would do as well, just for the sake of the fact that I think that total, or excuse me, that line climbed, it started at about 5, climbed up to about 8.5, depending where you see it right now. It could getting it back down to 4 in a game where I think the Hawks, they can at least keep things close. We'll see what it's like in the third quarter, maybe some live betting opportunities. If the Hawks just don't seem like they have any of that firepower on offense through the first half, I think you can expect that to remain in the second as well. So you might consider hitting the Bulls if we see them, if we see the Bulls coming out on offense looking like they do. We see the Hawks a little bit stagnant without, other key guys outside of Trae Young unavailable tonight. Then you can consider hitting that Bulls total as well if it remains decent in the first half. So that is all the time we have for this one. Make sure you are liked and subscribed to that page. Check out those other couple videos, and do stay on thelines.com, playpicks.com. Make sure you're checking out who is in and out of those NBA lineups all the way up to tip-off. And until we see you next, happy betting.